Jake Lisco of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Let's talk about some Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay, well, we got to start with the drama surrounding Trey Hendrickson. So he
Oh,
showed
yeah.
up to voluntary workouts to announce he's holding out. What's your read on this situation?
It's Trey Hendrickson continuing a long-standing, at this point, public campaign to try to amplify pressure on the team.
Mhm.
Unfortunately for him, the history of the Cincinnati Bengals is that when there is public pressure, they like to find a little bit of a deeper hole to put those heels into and try to hold their ground. But Trey is unhappy with the situation. He's
Mhm.
unhappy with the treatment that he's receiving from the team. I don't know if that necessarily means that the Bengals are doing anything insane. It very well could. The Bengals are historically a stubborn franchise that
Yes.
obviously, if they were offering a deal that Trey felt good about, he would take the deal or wouldn't be campaigning publicly this way. The public campaign indicates that they're not close. Trey Hendrickson wants a multi-year deal with guaranteed money involved. The Bengals probably, as far as we know, have offered a 1-year extension, which he doesn't want to deal with again because part of the reason he's in this
Right.
situation is because he previously took a 1-year extension as a way to try to protect himself from a potential franchise tag, which is still something that he would probably be concerned about happening in the future. So what's difficult for Trey is that there's no real leverage for him at this point. He's
Mm.
under contract, and if he sits out the season, he's one going to get fined or potentially be subject to fines that could get into the millions of dollar range, and that's a lot of money even for him.
Yeah.
And two, if he doesn't show up at all, then his contract doesn't actually count. His contract just rolls into the next year. He's still under contract with the Bengals for the same contract that he's under with them today. And so the best that he could do, and this would be extremely painful for everyone involved, is from a holdout perspective, not show up until around the trade deadline, at which point he would have
Mm.
to report if he wants to get to free agency next year, have the opportunity to get to free agency next year. But that sounds like a pretty radical course of action. And it's easy to say, I think, in May, I'm not going to play on my current deal. I think it gets harder as it gets to September.
Were you surprised he showed up?
I think it surprised everyone. No one was expecting him to
Yeah.
be there. He was planning to be in town for a Sam Hubbard event, his former teammate, now retired Cincinnati Bengals
Mhm.
defensive end, that is occurring, I think, as we record this on Thursday. So a couple days later in the week, but no one expected him to show up in Cincinnati. And further, they then had to scramble and figure out how he was going to talk to the media. He was talking to the Bengals PR folks on the field as they were trying to figure out, well, we don't really want this to happen in the locker room. So
Mhm.
what ends up happening is Trey approaches the media on the sideline, kind of toward the end of or after the practice, and they're talking on the practice field. So unscheduled appearance, and then the entire local media group that happened to be there that day for the one open practice a week gets to go through this 25-minute conversation with Trey that he feels is an opportunity for him to share his perspective and I think control the narrative a little bit in a way that a lot of players don't throughout the NFL. He does have a platform as a guy who's a two-time 17 and a half sack guy coming off of 2 great years, second in defensive player of the year voting, to take a bit more of a stand than perhaps some other players in the league can and control the narrative and make the Bengals look unreasonable. And I think he's been successful to a
Mm.
large degree. I did a very informal but a Twitter survey. 3,500 people responded, and of those, I think something like 8% thought it was Trey's fault, and 50% are blaming the organization. With the remainder split between I don't care or it's both of their fault.
Quick pause. If you haven't subscribed to the BetCanada YouTube channel, you can do it below in one click. It's free. It helps support our channel so we can keep bringing you NHL and NFL content. Now, back to the show. Between Hendrickson and Higgins and Chase and even Hamilton County, it feels like this has been the off season of contract
Mm-hmm.
drama with this organization. I don't know how to ask this more eloquently than this, but why is this organization so messy sometimes?
They're extremely stubborn. This isn't just this year
Yeah.
either. This also even applies to their first round pick, Shamar Stewart, who continues to
Mhm.
not practice early in the offseason program when he could be on the field. And these are valuable reps, especially after the rookie minicamp. I'm not as worried about the rookie minicamp. We just talked about this on Locked On Bengals recently, but once you get into the offseason program and the opportunity to work with the veterans, those become valuable reps for a player that needs to figure some things out to hit the ground running in the NFL and put that tremendous athletic skill set to work and start refining it in the vision for his role with the Bengals. But a contract dispute there, which is literally over the timing of like $1 million in 2028 or 2029. Like, is that going to get paid in March or is that going to get paid in game checks over the course of the season?
Yeah.
That amount of money in a fully guaranteed contract for 18 or $19 million is keeping him off the field right now. And if it's not that, then it's potentially an issue with the Bengals' participation, injury
Mhm.
protections for players. And so that part is still, I think, unclear. But the agent clearly sees a problem with it. And so Shamar Stewart's not on the field. So why is it so difficult? I think it's a philosophy. And it's a
Mm.
very frustrating philosophy to watch as a person who has followed the team over the years. And as any fan out there would tell you, it is a philosophy that lends itself into conservatism to try to protect themselves from risk,
Mm.
but ends up eventually, in doing so, taking on more risk. So, take, for example, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. If they had gotten those deals done, or at least Jamar Chase done last year, because they were certain that Jamar Chase was going to be part of the future,
Yeah.
they're saving multiple millions of dollars per year. They're saving multiple millions of dollars in upfront money to Jamar
Yeah.
Chase. If they had been proactive with T. Higgins and signed him to an extension as soon as he was eligible, as soon as they realized, oh, this guy's good, we should try to keep this guy who's good on the team. Again, you're saving, maybe even in T's case, nearly $10 million a year if they had
Yeah.
acted as soon as they possibly could have acted after his third year instead of waiting until it's not only after the fourth year, but after a year on the franchise tag. So this team has a history of dragging their feet and of
Mhm.
being stubborn and doing things when they have to do things. There are a couple of examples of them getting out in front of things and being more right than the public. Trey Hendrickson's first contract, a great example of this, where they got him on a value, but they also cost themselves money in the other direction quite often, and sometimes lose players as a result. And Jesse Bates is the most recent and significant example of that.
Yeah. If they are able to re-sign him, would you consider this offseason a success for them?
It would be a success insofar as I think they would say they've accomplished their goals.
Okay.
I think that I would still have some concerns.
Mhm.
There is a trend recently with this team where part of it is because of the way they're late to getting these contracts done, and it's costing them money in the long term.
Mhm.
Where I think it's pretty easy to argue one more move sure would have been helpful. And whether that is an interior pass rusher that they had an opportunity to sign much earlier in free agency, those
Yeah.
opportunities much more difficult now, or an offensive guard where they have a couple of draft picks that are going to compete, but where guard has undone them in different ways over the last few seasons, has led to Joe Burrow injuries, has led to losses in playoff games or losses in games that could have gotten them into the playoffs, or has torpedoed their run game in
Mhm.
ways that made them more reliant on drop back passing. And now they're kind of patching it with rookies. Rookie offensive guards tend to take some time to come along. You can't necessarily count on a third and fifth round draft pick
Right.
to come in and be high level starters for you right away. So I would think that the Bengals would probably say, look, we got the deals done with T. We got the deals done with T and Jamar, and we got Mike Gesicki back. We're happy about that. We brought back
Mhm.
BJ Hill. We're happy about that. We got a nose tackle we really like in TJ Slayton. We're happy about that. We like the guys we added in the draft. I think those are things they would say. And then I would say, well, what about guard? Well, what about an
Yeah.
interior pass rusher? Well, what about a piece of depth here or there where your tight end room is kind of an afterthought at this point because you can't afford to think about it, but you've lost a key piece from last year in Eric All, who's not going to play this year because of an injury. There are questions like that that linger that I think a another front office in the NFL might have looked at their opportunity this year and chosen to address or chosen to be more aggressive in those areas.